What does the Bible say? Yeah, you should be married before you go and live a married life. Personally, I think that you should be married before you live together. Now, a bunch of people have said, well, then yeah, you have to move in with them, and I don't even know who they are, what they're like all this stuff. I totally get it. That's part of marriage. That is part of working
covenant.
for the beauty that you're gonna have as you learn each other.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to episode number 13 of With the Heathers.
Yep.
At the time of this recording, we are just getting past a little bit of a cold.
Yeah.
And so excuse any of the sinus stuff.
We got COVID and flu tested, and we were both negative. So
Thank you, Jesus.
it's a common cold. Not fun, but it's a common cold.
Yes. It's been our heart on our YouTube channel, not just to do like vlogs or, life updates like we've been doing, but we've also wanted to start having some conversations and start sitting down and talking a little bit more about like our marriage and a little bit more about our experience and how we got married, but also like the things that come inside of marriage.
Yeah.
And so we're excited to.
Yeah, we're pumped. I think we just want to talk out some of the thoughts we have, answer some questions, answer questions that we thought or we wish we had answered, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, obviously the title of this video is mental health and marriage. And, many of you guys that know us already know kind of our experience with mental illness. And, me personally, mental illness runs throughout my family.
Mm-hmm.
Bipolarism, schizophrenia, all that kind of stuff is in my family line. And so especially over the last couple of years, I've been kind of journeying through this experience with following Jesus and having a mental illness. And our goal of really just getting together to just talk and have this conversation is just to let people know, like, it's okay if you have anxiety. It's okay if you struggle with depression. Like, you're not alone in that.
Yeah.
There's such a stigma on mental health today that's like people think they're crazy or they can't open up. And I just want people to know, like, you can open up.
Yeah. Well, I think in the church, we can easily start to feel or be told that you don't have faith if you have mental illness, that your anxiety is a result of lack of faith, or your depression is a result of joy in Jesus. Like, there's which I think we'll get into some of that stuff, but I think it's damaging to write off a lot of people as that, when there's incredible faith-filled people who believe in Jesus, that isn't the problem. And there's another route we have to investigate together or dialogue together to really get to, like, what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's such a hot topic today, isn't it? Like, everybody's talking about it. Everybody has some definition of it.
Right.
I've always looked at it in kind of three categories, and we're not therapists, we're not psychologists, we're not doctors.
We're just real people who have dealt with it.
Yeah, we just have been in it, and we're trying to stay out of it. And we'll get into, someone asked a question about doctors and anxiety and stuff, which we'll answer, but we're not psychologists, we're not doctors, we've just had some experience with it. And I think anxiety kind of falls in three categories. I think you have kind of that chemical anxiety, where your brain chemistry, something's off, there's an imbalance there's some sort of thing going on in your head. And then you have a traumatic anxiety, which is like you have
Triggered.
like trauma in your life.
Yeah, trigger specific.
Yeah, like people that get around certain things, they freak out because it triggers that experience. And then I think you have situational anxiety, which is like, are you putting yourself
in situations that intentionally have given you anxiety and you still go back to them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for us, like being married, we have been through all three of those.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, chemical anxiety is something that I deal with, and it's something that, especially over the last like 2 years, I've learned how to walk in without letting it, identify who I am.
Yeah.
Like,
I have anxiety. Anxiety is not who I am.
Absolutely. And that's the problem sometimes in church. I immediately put someone's sickness as a label, and we allow that to be like, oh, well, Jesus is going to rescue me from this. And he absolutely will. But your illness is not your identity.
Right.
And the first step to healing is recognizing that what you deal with does not define you. And that's that thing in this next generation that is so common for people to be depressed or anxious or sad or, melodramatic. And it becomes a way of life.
Yeah.
or it's like I am the sad person on Twitter. That's
Yeah.
my identity now.
Yeah.
And I think first steps first is like, for us, you really taught me that. You really showed me that, like having panic attacks and having anxiety attacks, even as a pastor, you showed me like that doesn't have to be all of you.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not all of you.
Yeah.
And I think you need somebody in your life to remind you all the other things you are, in addition to that one ingredient in your life, in your mind, in your soul, in your whatever it is. And I think that's where we've kind of worked, where we've been able to work through a lot of stuff is, we'll remind each other the additional things that are incredible about each other that also come along with that. Like I feel like with Billy, a lot of his overthinking that he deals with that like triggers some of his anxiety. Yeah, it's not fun to deal with overthinking. It's not fun to have anxiety. But then he sits in a room with a book that is like 770 pages long and can come out with a summary about how it's going to change the world if you know. And so his brain works in ways that overthinking also comes into play in an incredible way that I could never do, you know. And I just think that that's part of carrying your cross. And there's certain things in life where it's double-edged, where yeah, it's incredible that I'm creative, but it also sucks because I can't stick to one thing because I'm always moving on to the next thing because my brain is always going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I feel like with mental health, it's like that. There are things about you, if it is a chemical like with you, that I think it's perspective at the end of the day for some of it.
Yeah, I remember like a Lecrae tweet. He said something about like, if anxiety is something I have to deal with the rest of my life, like God's still gonna be with me in it. And I might be misquoting what he said, but it was basically like, if God heals me of this anxiety, that's great. I believe it.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing I'm starting to walk with this year, is like, I believe in the supernatural. I believe God can heal anxiety like that.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, is he still God in my life?
Is he still good? Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think when we talk about mental health, it means so many different things to different people. And so when it's brought up in conversation, like in friends or in church or in a podcast style like this, just have to like take it as a grain of salt and identify what that means to you and where you're at with it and stuff like that. So maybe like 2 years ago in LA, we were campus pastors in South Bay and just was having a lot of issues mentally and just was having panic attacks, freak out moments, all this stuff. And in our marriage, it became something that brought us together.
Yeah.
And for couples that might be listening or watching, that's the thing about marriage is if your spouse doesn't know everything about you, there's a setup that something could go wrong.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You know, and I'm not just talking about like little secrets like, you know, are you taking Oreos at midnight, you know, and your wife doesn't know, you know, that kind of thing.
Period.
I'm talking about like, are you stressed? Are you worried about something? Like, are you feeling insecure? Are you feeling inadequate? Are you feeling like questionable about something in life? Let your spouse know.
Yeah. You have to. You have to.
Yeah.
Because there's so many times where I think we've gotten to the point where we know each other so well that like body language is like easily read, but it came with paying attention, paying close attention.
Yeah.
Like if your spouse is stressed or they voice that they're stressed and that just becomes a write-off in your head, like, oh, they'll figure it out, they'll be fine. You're not paying attention to the body language and the expression and what it took for them to tell you that. Yeah. And I just think we now are at the point where like, if we're off or I'm off, we could tell.
We can notice it.
We can tell right away. But it came with years of paying close attention to each other.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And that's the thing about today's idea of marriage. A lot of people think it's more so about like, what can they do for me?
Yeah.
And I think it's like, it takes focus to be married and do it well, I should say. Like it takes like, you have to be attentive to your spouse, know their rhythms, know what gets them, know what doesn't get them, and try to find that balance in it. We asked a couple questions. Well, we didn't ask questions. People were asking us questions.
We put a poll up.
That's the proper terminology. Sorry, I'm not all.
You're so funny. Yeah, we put a poll up on Instagram and asked if anybody had things that we might attempt to answer.
Yeah, questions on mental health, questions on marriage. I have friends that are married and, you know, deal with mental health issues, or I have friends that have been married and just want to ask questions. Yeah. And you and I in our marriage, we've been married 6 years now. we're always trying to learn.
Yeah,
There's
for
never
sure.
there's never a point where you're like, I'm the authority now. Everyone listens to me. It's like,
No.
no, we have people in our life we're trying to learn from and grow with. But I don't have my phone. A couple
I
of
have
those
it here.
questions, yeah. We'll just kind of go through a few of them and see if we can do our best.
Let's see.
Questions and not answers, or I guess questions and responses.
Okay.
Q and R's.
The first question is, have you ever thought marriage was too hard?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Next
Yes.
question. No, I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, like our first year in marriage was amazing. There was this stigma where people were like, oh, it's going to be the worst. It was a challenge. But I think, you know, when we got through like the third quarter of that first year is when I just started giving up. And I was
Second
like,
year, yes. Going into second year was hard
yeah.
as all heck. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's when it was, right? Going
Yeah.
into second year? Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, marriage was hard. Yes, I don't want to say it's not hard because it's a big deal, and I think like when people say like, "Oh, it's easy," it's like, no, it takes some work.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things in life that are hard.
Yes,
A lot. A lot
Nothing-
more things in life that are beautiful and rewarding and exciting and exhilarating that are really hard, but you still do them because you want what's on the other side of them. So I think marriage has just become one of those things where it's like, it's not worth it. Well, yeah, because you've probably not had a healthy marriage, so you don't know what the value is.
Yeah.
Of course it's not worth it to you.
or your experience in your own family wasn't a good thing, and now that's kind of like, my parents,
Yeah.
you know, didn't make it, so why would I even try? I mean, think about this: 1 in 2 marriages end in divorce.
Yeah, 1 and 2.
1 in 2 marriages end in divorce.
That's so sad.
So why would people even try anymore?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that people automatically go, it's too hard. I think in our own experience, you know, like Randy said, like going into the second year, we did have some challenges. And,
Oh, yeah.
And I think it was because our idea of marriage started in one category, and then as we actually walked into it, and you know, we were prepared well too. Like it became something that we were like, oh wow, there's some depth that we have to discover.
Yeah. I think when you go into marriage, it exposes everything you thought you weren't. I think it, like, you really think you're selfless. You really think you love people. You really think that you're a good person. You really think that you can, like, it's just, you really think all these things about yourself. And then you realize you're not. And because all of those thresholds fall into a certain point where I can go be by myself and not have to still be any of those things. And when you get married, you get to the point where, well, I can't hide this. If I am a kind person, I'm a nice person, then that means even when my husband has left the laundry outside of the basket for the 6th time, am I still that nice person or not? Am I still understanding or not? When, you know what I mean? There's just so many different scenarios that, like, you can't hide from all of these things. You can't just shut off being these things that you've convinced yourself that you are anymore.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I would say too, to the person that asked that question, you know, if the question is phrased in a way that's like, do you ever think marriage was too hard to give up? Of course. Like, of course we've all felt that way. That's again, the part of unity. Have I ever felt like marriage was too hard that like God couldn't help me through it? Never, you know, never had a moment where I'm like, without God, and you know, that's
You can't do it.
Yeah, like I just haven't had that. So
Yeah.
get around some other couples, open up. That's the best way to start journeying through marriage.
Do you think it's okay for people to not get married, but be like living together, dating?
I mean, you've talked about this on your podcast
Yeah.
before. Yeah, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. I think one thing that we have to say is when you come into these spaces where you're listening to other voices, whoever it is, you have to remember this is a filtered opinion on what any question you ask is going to be. So what does the Bible say? Yeah, you should be married before you go and live a married life. I think that's very simple.
Yeah, keep the marriage bed undefiled is what Hebrews refers to.
So I think there's the plain answer to that. Personally, I think that you should be married before you live together. Now, a bunch of people have said, you know, well, then I have to move in with them and I don't even know who they are, what they're like all this stuff. I totally get it. That's part of marriage. That is part of working
covenant.
for the beauty that you're going to have as you learn each other. I think that's one part, but then I think the other side of it also is for me personally, it's a privilege that you wake up next to me. And it's a privilege that I wake up next to you. And so until you've committed to me and you don't get to just walk out on one Saturday morning when we've had a bad night, then you don't get to wake up next to me.
Yeah, we worked for that.
Yeah, we waited.
We waited for that.
When we got married and we did wake up next to each other for the first time, it was like the most incredible feeling in the world.
Yeah.
And it hadn't been faded away. It hadn't been taken from us. We hadn't given that away to somebody else, or to not somebody else, but we hadn't given that back to the enemy, essentially, so that when we wake up the day after our wedding, it feels like a regular Tuesday.
Yeah. And it's not like if you are living with your boyfriend or girlfriend, or you did in the past, it's not like a guilt, shame kind of thing. I love what you said earlier about this is a filtered opinion.
Yeah.
You know, for us as followers of Jesus, you know, it's what we live by. We look at the Bible as the final authority. But for somebody watching that goes, well, I don't see anything wrong with it, I think it's just it's watering down what marriage is supposed to be. You know what I mean? I've had friends before we got married that were just like, they were like, wait a minute, you guys haven't slept together? You guys haven't like lived together? Like, how do you know what you're gonna get?
Yeah.
You know, no test drive, none of that.
Yep.
And there's something just to be said about reserving yourself for that one person. It's a picture ultimately of God's love for us, marriage is. But
and I think too, I think that I've seen relationships where people have dated for 30 years and they're totally happy.
yeah.
And they've lived their lives and they're satisfied with the way that they're living their lives. And if that is your conviction, then ultimately that's your conviction. But I've also seen where people I know that are my age or were my age, early 20s, moving in with their boyfriend, breaking up, being stuck in a lease,
Yeah,
just like
miserable.
it puts you in a cycle, and it puts you in a place where now you're obligated to be responsible for this other person. So if they do find that they're in a toxic relationship, or their significant other cheated on them, or they just simply just need to be out of the relationship, now you're literally in a lease, stuck with your boyfriend. You have to, it adds so much more chaos to our lives than if you just patiently wait and allow those things to work themselves through.
So good.
You learn them. And I understand people are like, well, that can happen in marriage. Yeah, but in marriage, guess what? You can't just one day to the next be like, peace out.
Yeah.
It's a much longer process than that. So yeah, I've seen both sides for sure.
And that's what covenant love is. There has to be a separation from everybody else. I can't say I love my wife like I love my neighbor. Like, no, because I'm going to see my neighbor everywhere.
Yep.
My wife has a unique, reserved space in my heart. And that's the beautiful thing about marriage. You always have that to fall back on.
Yeah, it's really good. How do you tell the other one how you feel, even if it will hurt their feelings?
Oh, so like, how do I tell my spouse or my boyfriend or my girlfriend something that I need to tell them?
Yeah.
But I know that's going to hurt their feelings.
They might shut you down. This might be the third time you've tried to tell them.
Well, this is common though in marriage, huh? It's ultimately communication skills. Like, if I need to tell my wife something, but I know that it's going to hurt her feelings, I'm probably going to do two things. I'm first going to think about, when do I need to have this conversation? And then I'm going to think about, how do I want to communicate this to her? And ultimately, this is important that you know your partner's like communication style. You know, we do the love language. We know what fills each other's tanks. So I would just really think about the conversation, and I wouldn't stuff it down. I think a lot of people say, well, I just won't even bring it up because every time I bring it up, they trip and all that kind of stuff. Well, you're going to harm them long term if you keep showing them that you can't address that issue.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather hurt your feelings by telling you something on the spot that's going to like actually help us get better than just hold it in and ultimately harm our communication long term.
Yeah, that's good.
What do you think?
I think I wish it was that easy sometimes. I think in some relationships it is. I think it is like we've had the opportunity to learn each other's, like you said, communication style, pay close attention. But I have seen in relationships where, just example, say I'm trying to communicate something to you, and every time I bring it up, you get upset, you get frustrated, you shut me down, you use gaslighting terms like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I am a horrible person. I'm the worst husband that's ever existed. Yeah. You're right. I never do that. Or, wow, forget it. Never mind. Or I'm sorry. And they try to shut down the conversation instead of being able, you would try to shut me down instead of listening to me. and then you get angry for something I was trying to tell you like I'm affected by. So I wonder on the other side, because I've never experienced that where like you shut me down and you tell me like, no, I don't want to hear this, or you're right, fine, I'm wrong. Like you actually dialogue with me. So what would you tell? I feel like it happens a little bit more with husbands.
Yeah.
What would you tell husbands to say, like, how do you deal with that when it's almost like your masculinity is being attacked or your leadership in your house is being attacked when your wife is telling you you're maybe doing something wrong?
Yeah, well, I think it's the second wave now you have to address. If the first wave is like, I want to tell you something, once the husband reacts or the wife reacts and says, well, fine, I am a horrible person. Well, let's talk about that now. Let's not talk about what triggered it. Let's talk about why it's triggering you. Why is it important to you? Or why is that the first response that you beat yourself up and say, oh, I guess I'm just terrible?
Yeah.
Or why do you run from it every time? Because it's probably not, the fact that I left clothes on the side of the hamper for the 6th time that's the problem. That's probably not the problem.
Right.
Like, hey, Billy, you left clothes on the side of the hamper, not inside for the 6th time. That's just the trigger that gets you to the real issue.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage somebody and say, okay, start letting your spouse know if they react that way. Hey, I'm not doing anything to try to harm you or hurt you. Like nothing in my comment is wanting to take away your masculinity or your freedom as a woman. Like that's not it at all. And I think just identifying up front, like front end the conversation with acceptance and love, and then bring up the issue, like a compliment sandwich, some good, some bad, some good. But because if anybody that runs from anything in life, it's usually not like I'm running from that thing. It's another thing inside them that says, well, why are you reacting to that thing that way?
Yeah. So
I can't control what you tell me.
Yep.
But I can control how I receive what you tell me. I can either get offended, she's telling me about my throwing hamper skills again. I can't get the clothes in the hamper. Just, I'm working on a jump shot and trying to get it in the hamper. Or I can say like, wow, like my wife is trying to communicate something to me. Humble myself. What can I do to help and serve you?
That's good. That's good.
How do you here's a good one. How did you guys deal with previous sexual history before marriage? General thoughts. So I think the question is like, before you and I got married, how did we deal with the fact that we had been with other people before we got married?
Well, I mean, not to be just plain. Are you like, do you believe in grace?
That's good.
Like,
yeah.
I think back to one of the first thoughts we were talking about is relationships, marriage, make you realize everything you thought. Like, what did I say?
You said it exposes everything you're not or something like that.
Yeah, everything you thought you weren't.
Yeah.
And so, first test.
First test is, yeah.
Okay, I believe in, I accept the grace of God. It's on my life.
Sure.
I'm forgiven for my, sins and trespasses or whatever it is. But it's not applicable to this situation.
Yeah, like you got to live it fully out. I think too, I think more so, how do you have a conversation, because for us, I think it brought a lot of insecurity when we knew we were going to get married, we were engaged. And in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about, her past boyfriends or people she's been with. She was thinking about girlfriends and past girls that I had been with. And it was, again, a part of our life before, we got together. How do you bring that up with your spouse without that insecurity or without that kind of fear coming in,
Yeah, well, I think one, it has to be safe.
Yeah.
I think with us, I had known that you had like this past life. and I was, and when we started talking about it, like, oh, well, tell me like who you been with, like, not to be a trip, but like, are you safe? Are you clean? Like,
right.
What genuinely, like, there's real questions to.
Yeah, we were talking about our marriage night. We were talking about like when we were gonna have sex and all that, and it was awkward. It was
super awkward. It's super weird.
But it was needed.
Yeah, but I remember like telling you, like, you can tell me.
Yeah.
And I had to prepare myself as an individual, completely separated from the fiance at the time of Billy, or this soon-to-be wife. As an individual, I had to be prepared to make that space for you.
Yeah.
And it was still hard, but I think there was a side to it where I was like, okay, I'm gonna find out how many people he's been with, like what the truth of who and where he came from. Yep. And I think we can't overemphasize it. Like, we just put so much focus on like the sexual side of things, or like even just in Christianity, sex before marriage, oh, it's such a hyper focused thing that it like takes more power than it deserves.
Yeah.
It's more like, tell me about all of your life, and if it encompasses that you've had previous sexual partners, then let's talk about that. Let's talk about how that makes me feel. Let's talk about that, how that makes you feel. If you think that temptations are going to come later because was it a problem before? This is just part of knowing your spouse.
Absolutely.
You know?
And even on the mental health side, just how you process that is important. Like if you can process, my wife had to process my sexual history. She had to process the women that I've been with before. And it was never so that she could feel insecure or that she would judge right away. She has to know right away when we were engaged, you already have access that no other woman has had. So you got to just make sure you're letting and again, I'm assuming that if you're having this conversation, it's because you're getting married or you're married and you're trying to deal with sexual stuff. So it just has to be like, no one has access like she has.
Yeah. I remember when we were engaged, or when we were going to get engaged, or we were dating, I don't know, some point before you got married. And Billy had lived with one of his girlfriends before. And I remember being that like jacked me up, dude. Cause I was like, there are people, I haven't slept with you. We haven't had sex together. There's already so many things that we don't have access to because we're not married, and we've decided that together. But that doesn't mean that all these other people haven't had access. So now I was dealing with, okay, other people have had this access, but I don't even get that access. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I had, again, you have to deal with stuff. Doesn't matter if you plan to get married, if you've done premarital, and then none of that stuff matters if you as an individual aren't dealing with your own stuff.
So good.
Don't expect your marriage to get better, your relationship to get better, if you as an individual are not being introspective, if you're not spending quiet time, if you're not examining your heart, none of the other stuff are going to work.
That's the success in marriage. It has to be, what can I do first, before it's about what hasn't she done for me. Before you're blaming your spouse, it has to be about like, okay, how can I change or get better in this situation? So it's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, and we'll end with this one. How do you determine when you need to get help and when getting help exceeds your relationship with God? Like when it comes to your mental health, how do you know when like you should reach out for help, like medicine or a doctor or therapist or something?
I think one thing is it'll never exceed your relationship with God is the first part. You even coming to this thought is a result of you examining your heart, examining where your life is at, that you've included God in this thought, in this decision, in this choice to write that question. God is included in that. So I think that's where it starts. I know when you decided you're going to talk to your doctor about it, your primary doctor, you prayed about that. Yeah. And so is he really being exceeded and left out of the situation if you're...
That's so good. I don't think God is afraid of us having these thoughts. I don't think he's up there going, oh my gosh, they're thinking about getting on medication.
I don't think he's threatened either.
Yeah, that's a great point. He's not, it's not like pills, or prescription is more powerful than the blood of Jesus.
Yeah. Like or if it takes its place.
Yeah, that's typically like just legalism or performance based that comes in our mind and says, you should be able to get healed of this.
Right.
And I believe God can heal. I believe I've gone up to the altar. I've had hands laid on me. Remove this. And he has removed things in a way I never thought he could. But at the same time, like Paul talks about a thorn in the flesh. Like if anxiety is something that I have to deal with, I know God will give me the strength.
Yeah.
And if God puts doctors and modern medicine in this world, I'm going to pray and think about, should I try this? Should I try that?
Yeah.
Because I want to keep going after this thing.
Because you want to evaluate where you're at.
Absolutely.
And if you become less effective in your own relationship with Jesus, or less effective to the kingdom of God, and you pray and ask God, what is next? Where do I go next? And you feel an inclination to go talk to your doctor, now who's exceeding God? Are you exceeding because you're saying he can't work in the bounds of actually being on medicine?
Yeah.
But I think you were saying this earlier. There's different types of mental, like, illnesses, and I think, like you said, there's chemistry, there's situational, and then there's trauma based. From what we've experienced.
Yeah.
And I think if it's situational, and every time you see your ex-boyfriend, you're filled with anxiety because there's all this crap that shouldn't be there. You
Yeah,
just shouldn't be seeing them.
stop seeing your ex-boyfriend.
Don't get on medication. Stop seeing your ex.
Yeah, don't talk to your doctor about something that you can actually influence and change.
Yes. So I think, truthfully, there are oftentimes situations that we can take ourselves out of. There are rhythms we can stop in our life. There are patterns we can start in our life that will drastically affect our mental health in a positive way.
Yeah.
And you have the tools to fix them. And because we're too lazy to do them, we instantly, it just,
and
we rely on God then to fix something that he's given us the tools to
right. So I think situational change the situation.
Yeah.
I think traumatic anxiety, easily defined as like something happened in your past and you get anxiety from triggers in the present.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, this happens to people that were abused as kids or something. Like one present experience triggers anxiety because of that trauma. And that's where I think there are some spiritual avenues you need to go down. And obviously we're Jesus followers. It's going to be Jesus. But like, I think, when God heals past things, like that's spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a present issue with your brain makeup or there's something going on in your body, like remember, we were made from the dust. We're going to go back to the dust.
Yeah.
So there's a part of life where naturally, like my bones are going to get older, my body's going to get older. That just happens. If there's something in my brain, I can reach out for help with that.
Yeah.
Just like I drink water to sustain my body, like I need help for my brain too. And thank God for doctors. Thank God for medication. Now, before we close, let me say this. By no means are we saying after watching this video, go get on medication. I mean, because of these last few years, we feel like God's calling us to have more conversations about anxiety, about depression, about psychology, and how the modern day Jesus follower can still live out the truth of Scripture, but also be okay with these things.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure, like I remember throwing into a sermon one time talking about medication and just had someone grill me after, how could you bring up Zoloft in a sermon? Are you saying? And I was like, no, I can only get in trouble for the things I actually say, not for what you think I said. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But we want people to know, like, this is a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah.
Deconstruction is all around us. More and more millennials and Gen Zers are saying, you know what, I'm not going to be a Christian anymore, or I'm not going to believe in God anymore because my pastor told me I didn't have enough faith. And I was on a Twitter feed, and this one girl, she said, I gave up on Christianity 3 years ago when my pastor told me my anxiety was a lack of faith. I was like,
I know, it hurts your heart.
Yeah, because like maybe it is, but you got to go deep enough with people. And God's not calling us to fix people's anxiety.
Yeah.
He's calling us to love people. Naturally, we lead them to him, and hopefully that leads them on a track towards healing.
Yeah.
But I just love you, and I love that, we can have these talks in a safe space. And yeah, I
love it. You're not alone. We will leave all of the hotlines down in the description box if you are dealing with anything like that.
Yeah.
Our social medias are always open. Our inboxes are always open. We're always here to pray for you, walk with you. You're not alone if you feel this, like we've been saying over and over again. But yeah, don't stay where you're at. I think if there's one thing that I would leave off with is I feel like I've had situational and trauma-based anxieties and seasonal depression and stuff like that. And the way that I think I pushed through, I had help with you, and there were times where you just let me deal and feel and all that. But I think there were also disciplines that I had to start. And so if that is you, and maybe it isn't chemical or it is situational or it is trauma-based, make a commitment to yourself to add new disciplines to your life.
Yeah.
Wake up and put your favorite record on. Make yourself a cup of coffee. Read in the morning or at night. Like small things that make you feel successful, accomplished, where you can at the end of the day say, I did get something done today. Like I didn't let anxiety win. I didn't let depression win. And then you'll notice a change. But yeah, we're going to leave all of that stuff down in the description. We're here for you guys always. And we just hope we can continue this conversation.
Yeah, I definitely want to keep, the doors open for people, and we'll keep putting content out. Please let us know in the comments if there's other things we should hit, other questions you have. And thanks for watching. If you like what we do here at With the Heathers, hit that subscribe button, click that little bell, next to it, all the YouTube stuff. Do all the YouTube stuff. And we'll see you next time.